Hello and welcome to the Chinese Super League show brought to you by Orientivity, where we discuss and analyze all the action and highlights from the CSL. We've just had the first week of action, so let's remind you of those results. So all 8 fixtures taking place over the weekend. Massive wins for Shanghai SIPG and Shanghai Shenhua. We'll be discussing those games in more detail. And the pick of the bunch, arguably, Guangzhou Evergrande edging out Beijing Goan. Well, we're going to start things off with that first game of the season here with Rish Roshan Rai, our regular pundit on this show. And that was between Guizhou and Liaoning, now called Caixin Huwin. Roshan, the big news coming out from that game was not particularly positive, was it? Because, first of all, as the opening game of the season, it was pretty low profile. Guizhou have just moved up into the Chinese Super League, and Liaoning are a mid-table team at best.
Yeah, perhaps from a marketer's point of view, you would have wanted maybe some of the higher profile sides to be playing on the opening day of the Chinese Super League season. But what I absolutely didn't like was the spreading of what we call these days fake news shares. You know, it was an empty stadium because it was a game that was played behind closed doors. And there were just far too many people retweeting stuff that just wasn't accurate at all.
Yeah, if you see some of the tweets here, you know, the knives seem to be out from the Western media in particular that the Chinese Super League is not what it's cracked up to be. And to be fair, these alternative facts being presented by the media, boy, I sound like someone else, don't I, right now? They're not presenting the full story. To be fair, it was a game played behind closed doors. Let's be very fair here, because Guizhou had some crowd trouble towards the end of last season, so they couldn't possibly play with any fans. But then you've also got to look from the FA's point of view. Was this the right game to pick as your ad for the Chinese Super League?
Yeah, it's ironic, isn't it, that the reason why they had to play behind closed doors was because of unruly fan behavior in League One for Guizhou last season. So that was incredible that people were just spreading those tweets around without doing any fact checking.
You know, everything's done by apparently a fixtures computer. They could have picked a higher profile game. It wasn't helped, of course, by the fact that the AFC Champions League had happened earlier in the week. So those Champions League teams couldn't take part on Friday. But the other part of this game we have to discuss was, unfortunately, the under-23 rule. Now, for those of you not aware, every team in the Chinese Super League must start with at least one under-23 player.
Yep.
And in this particular game, Caixin, they took the lead in the 14th minute, and by the 17th minute, Wang Qiao, their under-23 player, was yanked off.
Yeah. Look, I applaud the rule for trying to want to develop young players coming in, but we've also got to, you then open yourself up to the prospect of clubs sort of abusing it or using it, finding loopholes in the ruling, because the rules don't state how long those under-23 players actually have to play, or that you need to replace one under-23 player with another. You know, these are things that could happen as the season goes on, especially when we're in such a results-based business. You know, they took the lead, they wanted to try and defend that lead. Yeah. It doesn't really do justice to those under-23 players, because the thing is, you take away that aspect of meritocracy. So they're in the side because, you know, regulations, they have to be. And then if you're taking them off after 17 minutes or so in a game, it doesn't really do much for their confidence, does it? And it doesn't give them that experience of playing top-level football. And it wasn't just Caixin Huwin that did that. Shanghai SIPG did that in their game as well.
Yeah, after half an hour, they yanked off their under-23 player. And guess what? All the goals started flowing in 4 minutes after that substitution was made. So it does also artificially inflate the market for these young players.
What it did is it brings something interesting up from a tactical perspective, in the sense that you've already made that early change in the game. And we saw what happened in the opening game in the CSL. The goalkeeper got sent off. I think it was Xiao Tian for Caixin. They had to bring a midfielder to play in goal, and still Guizhou couldn't find the winning goal there. So, you know, these things could pop up as the season goes on. I keep a lookout for that.
Karma is, well, you know what, right, in that instance. So that could play a part in the season. The Chinese FA, by the way, have said that they hope the clubs will follow this rule in the spirit in which it was intended. We'll have to wait and see. But let's talk about a game you just mentioned there, Shanghai SIPG. They had a massive win against Changchun Yatai. Don't forget, they were in action in the Champions League against Western Sydney Wanderers a few days earlier, and it happened to be the identical scoreline, Roshan. A fantastic display.
They look amazing in attack, and I think Oscar gives them so much from central midfield. Wonderful energy that he brings to this Shanghai SIPG side. You just look at his late runs into the box. Reminded me a little bit of Frank Lampard in those days where you're scoring goals for fun. for Chelsea. Hulk as well had a fantastic game. Elkerson with that hat-trick there, and I like that Wu Lei got himself on the score sheet as well. You know, Andre Villas-Boas took out that his under-18 boy that he started, Zhang Hua Chen, in there. Put in a little bit of experience after they went a goal behind. Yu Hai coming in, and then they just ran away with that one, Shanghai SIPG. They looked really good, and they are the early season favourites to sort of push Guangzhou Evergrande all the way for that CSL title.
Well, it's time that you brought up Guangzhou because the defending champions were also in action. It was a massive game, arguably the best of the bunch on the first weekend of the CSL. They beat one of their arch rivals, Beijing Guoan, 2-1 in a very bad-tempered affair. Paulinho popping up with a winner.
Great game, great game. I mean, Paulinho, who would have expected him to find himself on the score sheet with 2 goals? Not one, but 2 goals. 13 yellow cards, 2 red cards. Guangzhou's captain Zheng Ji getting sent off, shares. You know, Huang Bowen's delivery for that first goal I thought was excellent. You know, this game had everything. Renato Augusto was brilliant in central midfield for Beijing Guoan. He was the one that won the penalty for them. And you know, at certain spells of the game, Beijing were defending solidly. Guangzhou was struggling to break them down. But eventually, as you know, as the cliches go in football, as champions do, they found a way to win. Paulinho finishing it off as the ball rebounded off the post.
Yeah, great game that one was, and also one that surprised everyone perhaps was Shanghai Shenhua, another very high-profile match against Jiangsu. Remember, Jiangsu had played in the Champions League early in the week. Shanghai dumped out of it embarrassingly a few rounds earlier, and Roshan, the pressure was on Gus Poyet apparently already, and he delivered in spades.
And they needed to deliver. I mean, the pressure on Poyet was incredible. The pressure on not just Poyet, but his team as well. And Carlos Tevez came out and made a plea to the fans, give us time, be patient. Wow, they've delivered, and they've delivered in style, scoring 4 goals against a team that finished second in the CSL last season. They were in complete control here. It was one of those terrible days for Jiangsu Suning at the office. Roger Martinez picked up a hamstring injury, had to come off after 12 minutes. Teixeira in the end getting himself sent off as well. Just a lot of frustration with that Jiangsu Suning side. But you go back to Shanghai Shenhua, they found a wonderful balance in that team. And good to see them get off to a good start. Moreno getting himself on the score sheet a couple of times, and Carlos Tevez scoring on his CSL debut.
Well, let's have a look at what all that means at the end of match day 1. Starting at the bottom, who would have thought Jiangsu at the bottom?
You know, yeah, didn't get off to a great start. Jiangsu Suning at the bottom of the table there. I'm sure they will start to pick up and climb up the table. Beijing Guoan perhaps didn't deserve to lose that game against Guangzhou, but they'll find it a little bit easier in the weeks to come in the CSL. Hebei China Fortune, that was a surprise result for them, a 0-0 draw against Henan Jianye. But if we look at the top of the table now, Shez, Shanghai SIPG, the early leaders, thanks to those 5 goals that they scored. The 2 Shanghai teams with the big investments there, first and second at the moment. But look, it's going to change as the season goes on.
Looking at the fixtures coming up on match day 2, some interesting ones as well.
Well, Jiangsu and Shanghai are in action on that Friday night. Beijing Guoan, you expect them to pick up 3 points against Guizhou going forward. Shanghai Shenhua, I'm looking forward to that one against Tianjin Quanzhen. Hopefully Tianjin can bounce back after their opening day defeat against Guangzhou RNF. But match of the round for me, Shandong Luneng against Guangzhou Evergrande.
Thanks very much for all of that, Roshan. Well, it's been an eventful first weekend in the Chinese Super League. I'm sure plenty of you looking forward to round 2. Do follow us on our Facebook page, Chinese Super League Asia Fans Club, and you can post your comments. We'd love to read them out. And in fact, we look forward to seeing you very soon on the Chinese Super League show brought to you by Orientivity.